problem is, for 68% of people receiving it right now, they are being paid more on unemployment than they made in their job. And I'll tell you, I've spoken to small business owners all over the state of Texas who are trying to reopen, and they're calling their waiters and waitresses, they're calling their busboys, and they won't come back. And of course they won't come back because the federal government is paying, in some instances, twice as much money to stay home.
But you're open to a lesser amount?
All right, so that was Ted Cruz kind of accidentally making the case that maybe we should have higher wages. I mean, you know, that would be one good takeaway from that, but there's plenty more. So now let me give you some context into this. Now, this happened during an interview with CBS's Margaret Brennan, who, as you saw, was pushing Ted Cruz in the additional $600 federal benefit to unemployment. That runs out at the end of the month. That whole thing was part of the CARES Act, which, by the way, the irony here is he's complaining about the $600, but what about the trillions of dollars that went to private corporations? Ted's corporate donors, they got a lot of money from the CARES Act. Fascinating. In fact, most of that legislation was a gigantic giveaway to the rich. Even Kanye West got Paycheck Protection Program funding. Which, by the way, if you don't fire anybody, that loan turns into a grant, and it's basically free money. Another person, Elon Musk. Elon Musk earlier had just a disastrous take, where he's like, "Well, we shouldn't give people welfare anymore." Really? You just got a ton of corporate welfare, Elon. Yeah. All right. So now, not only that, but you're at Jeff Bezos. During making billions of dollars during the pandemic and not really paying any taxes. But no, the real problem is people in Texas not wanting to go back to work in the midst of a pandemic, whose hotspots are Arizona, Florida, and yes, Texas. Oops. By the way, his argument really isn't true. Now he says, "Oh my God, they're trying to call these people back to work, and they're saying no because the government's paying them to sit on their ass." I mean, and that's why we can't have an economic recovery, even though people want to get back to work. Wait a minute. He said in a different part of that interview, I don't remember if that was in the clip itself, right? But he said, Americans, we want to get back to work, but it's this benefit. But then you also turn around and say, well, the benefit is what's keeping people home. Again, not true at all. If your employer lays you off, right, because of coronavirus, which has happened to a lot of people, and then they decide, okay, the state says that we can open, at half capacity. All right, we're going to call back some of our servers, some of our waitresses, or busboys, whatever, cooks, obviously, and bring some of them back to work. You know what, Bob? We tried calling all of our servers. Nobody wants to come back because that damn government is paying them $600 extra in unemployment. But that's not true, because if you actually do refuse employment, according to the rules of signing up for unemployment, if you deny it, that job callback, you don't get unemployment anymore. Well, they say, well, you refused a job offer, so you're cut off. Because unemployment is supposed to only protect people who, are laid off or unemployed or lost their job, whatever. In these kinds of circumstances, that's what unemployment insurance is for. And this federal benefit is just to help people weather coronavirus. And so that additional benefit should be going to these busboys, these waiters, and waitresses and all that, the waitstaff, and everybody else who's been affected by this, in order to help them not only get through, but allow them to, once the economy opens back up, to increase their spending and really get the gears of the economy moving again. And Ted Cruz is against that because, well, he'd rather have, I guess, all this money go to his corporate donors and not to people who actually need it, because I think he sees them as lesser, as not deserving. And so I think that's the case. But so now, again, I've explained how the system works. So Ted Cruz is lying, gaslighting, trying to push people back to work in the middle of a pandemic that is growing in his state. But that's who Ted Cruz is. We know that. This is who he is. He doesn't really care about the workers. And by the way, the Republican proposal for this is not to completely take away the federal benefit, but to cut benefits to 70% of their wages, meaning that the waitstaff will still get less money, a lot less money, which is going to be a disaster for the economy, right? And not only that, but it's going to force these people back to work to make money for the company. So there's a lot of things wrong with Ted's calculation, right? For one, most people are not actually ready to go back to work. So let me give you some findings from a recent Gallup poll, right? Put out earlier this month on coronavirus. Now, the poll asks a ton of questions, right? One of them is, how long do you think the level of disruption occurring to travel, work, school, and public events in the U.S. will continue before it starts to improve? So basically, how long you think this is going to last, right? This economic downturn, this shutdown, right? Only 7% said a few more weeks. 17% said a few more months, a little bit more optimistic. For the rest of the year, 36% of respondents said that. And 40% said longer than this year. So roughly, you have 76% of Americans saying it's going to at least last to the end of the year or even longer. We expect this disruption to last quite some time, right? So again, Americans are expecting to deal with this for a while. And so the next question is relevant, right? So on the issue of staying home, to kind of frame this in context, so you want people to stay home during a pandemic, right? So they asked, well, what's a greater threat to America right now? 54% said coronavirus and 47% said the economic shutdown, right? So again, to kind of frame that in context, right? Generally, it's fairly close to even. People are like, coronavirus is pretty, is a threat to the American life, threat to America, as is the economic shutdown. Both of them are really significant problems. But Americans, according to this next question, are still unequivocal. For the most part, they said, well, even though that, the economy, it's a huge problem. It's a great threat to to America, and it's going to take some time. And we would still rather, 68% of Americans said we would rather stay home. Now that's even when you look at the question that was asked. They asked, which of these do you think is better advice right now for people who do not have symptoms of coronavirus and are otherwise healthy? To stay home as much as possible, to avoid contracting or spreading the coronavirus, or to lead their normal lives as much as possible and avoid interruptions to work and business. So basically, stay home, interrupt business, even though we know 47% of Americans say the economic shutdown is a threat to America. Still, 68% of them say, stay home, stay home. I mean, again, you should probably stay home. Not only that, but a full 75% of Americans do not want that $600 benefit cut. So the people do not agree with Ted Cruz or the Republicans on this issue. They say, stay home, do the masks and social distancing. Yes, we know the economy is a problem, and it is going to harm. It is a big threat to America. But even knowing that, we still say, give the $600 benefits, let people stay home until we have found a vaccine, until we have controlled this pandemic. And again, I'm going to give you the numbers on that. And so, look, the only way that we're going to get back to work, right, that we're going to get back to a semblance of normal is to wait out the virus until we have a vaccine or until we've actually done the social distancing and all that in order to, lower the amount of cases, right? So that, again, wear masks, social distancing, do all that stuff until things kind of get a lot better when it comes to controlling the virus. Now, if that, of course, is difficult, that's not an easy thing. And yes, it's going to be costly for the economy. I get that. Within a few months, though, experts do say that we should have this under control. And that's it. And then we can put this behind us and we can actually get back to rebuilding the economy. Now, unfortunately, most politicians, they're not ready to do that. They're not willing to do that because really, they're only really concerned about their next election cycle and the money that they get from their corporate donors. These companies do not make money if you are sitting home. They think that if they open up, there are going to be people that flood in. Some of that will happen. Some people, will definitely leave their homes and go frequent these restaurants. But I think most people will continue to do takeout. They'll continue to either do fast food or stay home because they don't want to get themselves or their family members sick. And so that said, let me give you the last numbers on this. They asked if there were no government restrictions and people were able to decide for themselves about being out in public. So this is a conservative position, right? Get rid of all the restrictions, let people outdoors, right? How soon would you return to your normal day-to-day activities? Right now, after the number of new cases declines significantly, after there are no new cases in the U.S. for a period of time, or after the coronavirus vaccine is developed? Well, let me give you the numbers. 27% of people would immediately go back to doing their normal life. 25% would say after the new cases decline. 28% said after no new cases, and 21% said after we have a vaccine. And so you have nearly 3/4 of the American people that are saying, let's wait. Let's wait before we get back to normal. Let's wait until the cases go down. And of course, I think that's part of the decision by the Trump administration to no longer give the CDC data, right? To take it over, to give it to the DHS instead. And already you can start to see some of the numbers mysteriously flatline. Weird how that's working out. But look, overall point is the American people still do not agree with Ted Cruz. And so as usual, it's shown that he is once again serving his donors and not the people. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.